Hello, my name is Garth Armit. I'm a program specialist at the West End SELPA, and I'm going to be giving you an overview of a training called the Pathway to Harmony. Before I begin, I'd just like to acknowledge that this training has been a collaborative effort between staff both within and outside the West End SELPA and Rancho Cucamonga. And this training overview is also a collaborative effort between myself and another program specialist at the West End SELPA, Mr. Lloyd Rexted. Before we get into the training, just take a quick look at the West End SELPA mission statement. You can see from that slide exactly what we do and who we serve. I'd like to draw your attention to the bottom statement. As a child in everything we do, this is our overriding philosophy. So, Pathway to Harmony, what is it? Well, before I get into the two specifics on that slide, I just want to mention that Pathway to Harmony takes a comprehensive look at the whole IEP process, from building and maintaining relationships between the participants in that process, the actual IEP meeting, and finally taking a look at conflict and dispute resolution at the end of it. Now, it's a lot of ground to cover, so it does take a lot of time to do that. It's a 3-day training in all, but we feel that it's a good investment of your time if you want to participate in this, because you'll come away with what we believe are going to be some very useful tools to help you build relationships, conduct IEP meetings effectively, and resolve conflict or disputes. Target audience, a wide range of people, from teachers and school site principals, psychologist specialists, central district officer or central office school district administrators, and last but not least, parents. First day of the Pathway to Harmony training, we take a real close look at 4 foundational concepts, and there they are there on that slide. We take a look at conflict. We have, in the Pathway to Harmony training, we have the perspective that despite our best efforts, sometimes conflict happens, but it's not always a negative thing. And we talk about the ways to resolve that in effective and satisfactory ways. We also take a look at a concept called core concerns, which is borrowed from the world of diplomacy, that basically takes the stance that everybody has some needs, basic needs, fundamental needs they need to have met in any interaction to have them feel fully engaged and being willing to participate in that process. And we dive into that in the Pathway to Harmony training. We, of course, look at communication. Without effective communication, very little can happen. So in the Pathway to Harmony training, we concentrate a lot on the necessary skills to be an effective communicator, and we practice those with role plays and case scenarios. And finally, last foundational skill, concept, but last but not least, is trust. Without trust, people cannot work together. So we look at what constitutes trust and what's involved in that, and how to build trust between the participants in the IEP process. Day 2 is where we really get into the actual IEP meeting. And there's 4 key principles involved in this. We take the perspective in the Pathway to Harmony training that good IEP meetings don't just happen, that they must be organized and set up. And we talk a lot about how to do that, how to set up, how to organize effective IEP meetings. We actually give you a roadmap to do that. Once in the meeting, meetings should have, the IEP meeting should have a structure, a format, a framework. And we discussed a lot in the Pathway to Harmony training what that looks like. Then we talk about the roles. IEP meetings sometimes have a lot of people on them. So, and sometimes people, when they come to IEP meetings, they're not sure exactly what their role is. So there's a lot of focus on roles in IEP meetings and what those look like, and how people can fully participate and contribute to the meeting. Finally, and certainly not least in this part of the training, we look at the facilitation of an IEP meeting. Meetings need to be managed. They need to be have somebody to supervise them, and this requires a lot of skill. And facilitation of IEP meetings is a difficult task. So the Pathway to Harmony training devotes a lot of time and attention to facilitation skills and practicing those, so when you come out of the training, you'll hopefully have some real tools to take back to your IEP meetings to ensure the success of those meetings. Day 3, we look at alternative dispute resolution, or what is otherwise known as ADR. Sometimes, no matter how well organized IEP meetings are, how well facilitated they are, sometimes not everything is resolved in those meetings. Sometimes some conflict arises or some disagreements, simple disagreements. Day 3 takes a look at how to resolve those disagreements or that conflict outside the IEP meeting process. And we look at resolution continuums, different options that are available to people to resolve those differences. We look at what's involved in actual resolution session, the procedural part of it. And then we take a look at a couple of neat concepts called BATNA and WATNA. These are acronyms for concepts for bargaining and negotiating that enhance the possibility that all participants involved in the process feel that they've had their needs met and they feel satisfied. Last but not least, in day 3, we look at mindfulness. Mindfulness is a concept that's used in a lot of different areas now, and we look at the fundamental pieces of that, about being aware of people being aware of their own emotions, being able to self-regulate, being able to stay in the moment. So they're being able to be fully engaged in the whole IEP process from beginning to end. And this enables them to be more effective communicators, more effective participants in the process, which, put together with all of these other concepts and key principles, helps increase the likelihood of good outcomes, better outcomes for the students that we work with. So that's a very quick overview of the Pathway to Harmony training. If you have questions or you'd like to look into this a little bit more, you can contact either myself or Lloyd Rexted through our email or telephone numbers, which are on the website of the West End SELPA. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, and I wish you a good day. Take care.